Hola and welcome to my cooking channel, The Vegan Cook's Passport, where I aim to cook a vegan version of every national dish in the world. Muy bien. This is episode 7, so the country is Argentina. First South American country, one of the hardest ones I've done. Before we get started, I'm going to show you where Argentina is on a map. Argentina is a large South American country, right here. It has a tropical northern border up here and spans right down to Patagonia, which is pretty much the closest you'll get to Antarctica. It's also an important wine producing country, mainly Malbec from Mendoza, which is this area here near the Chilean border, right on the mountains. The people speak Spanish. It was colonized by the Spanish, but there's a heavy Italian influence. You could almost call it the Italy of Latin America. Okay, so I said Argentina was one of the hardest ones I've done so far, and that's true because Argentina is famous for the asado, which is basically meat, high quality meat, cooked on a coal barbecue or a parrilla. So, quite difficult to recreate. There are a couple of things that you'll always find on an Argentinian asado. One of them is the chorizo, so it's a sausage basically. A little bit different to Spanish chorizo, which is usually cured and a bit harder. So it's softer than that, but it's not as soft as a Mexican chorizo, which is really sort of soft and crumbly and quite vinegary as well. It's somewhere in between those two. So I'm going to do a vegan version of the chorizo. The main ingredient I'm going to use is the Swiss brown mushroom, which I like to use to recreate a mince. A whole load of spices, loads of paprika, smoked paprika, other things going in there, onion, garlic, and flour. Now, I'm mainly using chickpea flour. You can use normal flour if you like. I'm also using gluten flour, which is also called vital wheat gluten, wheat gluten. It's basically wheat flour with everything washed out of it apart from the gluten. So it's essentially just pure gluten. It's like the opposite of gluten-free flour. If you're celiac or gluten intolerant, don't use this stuff because it's going to give you a pretty bad stomachache. Also, if you can't find it or don't want to buy it, don't worry. Just use the chickpea flour or normal flour if you like. The reason I've used a little bit of this is because it really does recreate the texture of meat quite well that you can't get with other flours. So I did a lot of trials trying to make this sausage. I messed it up quite a few times, and most of it is because I used too much of this stuff. Do not overdo it with the gluten flour. It becomes pretty disgusting if you get too much of this stuff on there. If you think that the sausage mix is too wet and you want to add more flour, use the chickpea flour. Don't add more gluten flour. I'm not going to describe to you what happens to it if you do, because it's probably going to put you off your dinner. So the chorizo in Argentina is usually eaten with in a bread roll. So they call it a choripan. So it's a chorizo, chori, and then pan, which is bread. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm also going to be doing a chimichurri, which is an Argentinian sauce that accompanies all of their meats. It's made with oregano and parsley leaves and vinegar and olive oil and a few other ingredients. It's really basic but really good. You don't just have to use it for this. It's really versatile and super yummy. Now onto the steak. So, how am I going to recreate steak? I haven't gone all fancy with this one, to be honest. The chorizo was hard enough. So in place of the steak, I'm just using a portobello mushroom. Why portobello? Because it's probably the meatiest of the mushrooms. It's not going to taste like steak, but it's a pretty good replacement to have on that dish with the choripan and with the chimichurri. It tastes delicious. I've got a little glaze that I'm going to show you how to do as well to put on there. Which gives it a sort of savoury taste as well, which sort of replicates the flavours you'll be getting in steak. But yeah, on a barbecue, this is a delicious. Now, finally, before we crack on, the asado is generally cooked, or always in Argentina, cooked on a big parrilla, which is a big barbecue. It's usually coal, maybe a little bit of wood. They do it low and slow, so they get the coals going, and then they put the grill high up so they can slow cook their meat. Now, I've done a separate video of the best way to light a coal barbecue, which you could find just here. It comes from my time living in Chile, where they've got a pretty unique way of lighting the barbecue. It's foolproof. If you have a coal barbecue and you want to know how to light it the best way, I definitely recommend you check out that video. Now, as always, I'm going to give a wine pairing suggestion at the end, but to be honest, it's going to be Argentinian Malbec. That was a pretty obvious one, but I'll still go through that in the end anyway. You can find a full list of ingredients in the link to my blog below. Vamos! Begin with the chimichurri. Start by adding 2 cloves of minced garlic to a bowl, followed by 1 finely chopped jalapeno pepper, 2 tablespoons of finely chopped parsley, 2 tablespoons of dried oregano, the zest of 1 lemon, the juice of the same lemon, or another lemon if you like, a couple of pinches of salt, and a grind of pepper. Add 1/4 cup of red wine vinegar, 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil, stir all the ingredients together and store in the fridge until needed. Now onto the chorizo, which you'll be making with a food processor. Add half a chopped onion, 5 cloves of roughly chopped garlic, 200 grams of Swiss brown mushrooms, 2 tablespoons of smoked paprika, 2 tablespoons of sweet paprika, 4 tablespoons of oregano, half a piece of grated nutmeg, 1 tablespoon of mustard seeds, 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast flakes, and 2 teaspoons of salt. Blend in the food processor until it's a coarse paste, then transfer to a bowl. Add 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 teaspoons of chili flakes. Mix together with a spatula, then add 2/3 cup of chickpea flour and 1/3 cup of gluten flour. Thoroughly mix the flour in with the paste. Then divide the mix into 6 on a chopping board. Now you need to mold the mix into sausage shapes, wrap up in baking paper, and tie off the ends. When you're ready to start cooking, place the chorizos in a steamer over a medium heat and cook for 20 minutes. Next, lightly oil the chorizos, transfer to your barbecue and cook for a couple minutes on each side or until they've browned nicely. The final part of the meal is the mushroom steaks. Add 4 tablespoons of soy sauce to a bowl, followed by a tablespoon of maple syrup, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and half a teaspoon of ginger powder. Mix those ingredients together, then bring the glaze and the mushrooms to the barbecue. It's best to use a brush to cover the mushrooms with the glaze, then place on the barbecue for a couple of minutes or until they're juicy and soft. Cut the cooked chorizo lengthways and serve in a hot French baguette with the chimichurri ladled on top. Slice the mushrooms up and sprinkle with some parsley leaves and leave some chimichurri on the side for dipping. Aquí estamos, asado argentino vegan. So I've got the chorizo right here. I've got the mushrooms here in place of the steak. They look fantastic. I've done a couple of grilled tomatoes that you can do if you want. You can also put a salad in there if you like. I've got the chimichurri in this little thing here. And I've just got a bit of sort of French baguette, which I put in the oven just to heat up beforehand. So I'm going to just make the choripan. See what that's like. So just cut open the bread like that. And then I'm going to chop the chorizo lengthways, so sort of butterfly style or mariposa, like that, just to split it in 2. Oh, you can see all the spices we put in there, that looks fantastic. Chuck that in there, oh yeah, oh yeah. And then spoon some of the chimichurri on top. You can be pretty liberal with the chimichurri. Once you taste the stuff, you're just going to want to eat the whole thing. It's bloody good. Alright, let's give it a taste. First choripan, oh yeah. Mmm. Mmm. Yes. Oh. Reminds me of Argentina. Loads of incredible flavour from the spices. The chimichurri is great. It doesn't have, to be honest, comparing it with an actual Argentinian chorizo, it doesn't have that juiciness that you'd get from a really good sausage. But it's still got all the flavour there. Yeah, delicious. Let's try a bit of the mushroom. Put a bit of the chimichurri on the mushroom as well. Mmm. Juicy, meaty, a little bit of sweetness, like a sort of sweet and savoury. It doesn't taste like steak, but it's definitely like a really good meaty equivalent for you to put on the plate. Now, drinks suggestion, there's only really one thing you're going to drink with this, and that's Argentinian Malbec. Personally, the area of Mendoza is where they produce the majority of it. I think about 90% of Argentinian Malbec comes from Mendoza. My favourite place to get Malbec is a little sub-region within Mendoza called Uco Valley, UCO. It's at about 1,200 meters altitude. You get all that lovely, rich Malbec fruit, but also this great acidity keeps the wines really lively. Really, really good quality wines, and would be fantastic with this. As always, if you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe for new videos every week. And tune in for the next episode where I'll be cooking a vegan version of the national dish of Armenia. Adios!